Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tracking illicit black money from the exact moment of a high-stakes bust straight through the legal machinery and literally all the way into the bank vault. We're looking at a legal case study on the mechanism of federal asset forfeiture in the U.S. It's this massive, highly regulated pipeline designed to ensure that crime, well, doesn't pay. So let's follow the cash every single step of the way.
The bust happens. You know the drill. Red and blue lights flash, the cash is bagged into evidence, and the clock instantly starts ticking.
Then, the courtroom gavel bangs. The legal battle wraps up, and ownership officially, legally, changes hands from the criminal enterprise straight over to the state. And finally, the assets. Whether we're talking gold watches, sports cars, or massive sprawling estates, they are stripped down and sold off to the highest bidder on the open market. It's a sequence we've all seen play out in movies, right? But the real story is what happens after the cameras turn off. Where does all that black money actually go? To understand this incredible pipeline, we really need to pull back the curtain on the legal mechanisms and follow the money through the intricate web of the American justice system. Now, the core philosophy here is that the government views these illicit proceeds, the black money, as the ultimate target. It's not just about locking up the bad guys, it's about totally dismantling their operational capacity. We're talking money from drug trafficking, wire fraud, money laundering, even unreported income hidden from the IRS falls under this umbrella, because they treat that failure to report as a very serious federal offense. So right off the bat, the absolute crucial point is understanding the fundamental difference between seizure and forfeiture, because they are definitely not the same thing. Seizure is just the physical act of law enforcement taking control of the property. They have probable cause, so they take it. Forfeiture, on the other hand, is the actual legal process where the government permanently claims ownership. First they take it, then they gotta prove they can actually keep it. Enter our cast of financial detectives. There are specific federal agencies that each target a really unique slice of the criminal underworld. You've got the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit, the only guys who can investigate tax code violations. The FBI handles organized and white-collar crime. The DEA goes after the financial infrastructure of drug cartels. And Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, they specialize in cross-border smuggling. And you know what? They all feed into this exact same system. But how do these detectives even know where to look? Well, behind the scenes, we have FinCEN. They act as the eye in the sky, analyzing massive amounts of banking data mandated by the Bank Secrecy Act to find suspicious activity reports, or SARS. A classic red flag is a crime called structuring. Imagine someone repeatedly depositing exactly $9,999 in cash just to avoid federal reporting limits. That immediately triggers alarms, pointing our detectives straight to the hidden cash. Okay, let's move to the legal labyrinth. The government can't just pocket the money they find. They actually have to follow due process through one of three distinct legal tracks to permanently keep it. First up is criminal forfeiture, which is an action against the person during sentencing. But the next two tracks operate very, very differently. In civil judicial forfeiture, you get these completely absurd-sounding legal actions where the government literally sues the money itself. It's called an in rem action, meaning against the property. Because they're suing the cash directly, they don't even need a criminal conviction of the owner. They just need to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the money is inextricably linked to a crime. Crazy, right? And then we have administrative forfeiture. For uncontested cash or personal property valued under a massive $500,000 threshold, agencies can just completely bypass the judge. It's an out-of-court process. If the owner doesn't step up, claim the cash, and challenge the forfeiture, the seizing agency just finalizes it right there on the spot. So once the legal pathway is set, what actually happens to the physical stuff? The moment cash is seized, it enters Phase 1, custody and management. The money drops straight into a highly secure, regulated federal holding account while the lawyers battle it out. But what if the asset isn't cash? What if we're talking about a Miami mansion or a fleet of supercars? That's where the U.S. Marshals Service steps in. Their job is uniquely challenging. They literally become property managers. They have to make sure a drug kingpin's mansion doesn't fall into disrepair or that a seized Ferrari doesn't lose all its value before the trial ends. Next, we hit Phase 2. This is really the climax of our legal case study. The court, or the administrative body, issues the final forfeiture order. At this exact second, the invisible legal cord is cut. Any claim of ownership by the criminal is permanently severed, and the title officially transfers over to the United States government.
Now that the government actually owns it, we enter phase 3, liquidation. There's a pretty awesome exception here. Sometimes a seized sports car gets repurposed for an undercover law enforcement sting, but for the vast majority of assets, the goal is immediately turning them back into raw, usable capital.
How do they do that? Well, the U.S. Marshals host these incredible public auctions. They sell off everything you can imagine: seized diamond necklaces, Rolexes, and yes, even confiscated Bitcoin wallets. Seized homes go right back on the open real estate market. These are real public events where everyday citizens can literally buy up a dismantled criminal empire, piece by piece.
Once it's all converted back to cash, the funds don't just vanish into some giant general government spending account. That's actually a huge misconception. Instead, the money is strictly divided into two primary revolving funds, depending entirely on which agency actually made the bust. We have the DOJ Assets Forfeiture Fund on one side and the Treasury Forfeiture Fund on the other.
Let's look at how the DOJ uses its fund. They pay for asset management, and they fund complex future investigations. But a massive priority here is a process called remission, and this is absolutely crucial. Through remission, the government actively uses this black money to make innocent victims whole again. It's literally returning stolen livelihoods back to the victims of the very frauds that generated the cash in the first place.
But as we peel back another layer, the pipeline gets incredibly interesting for the local police departments on the ground. See, federal agencies don't do this alone. They rely heavily on state and local cops for these massive busts. To incentivize this, the system uses a really unique program called equitable sharing.
Through equitable sharing, local police departments who assist in taking down a criminal enterprise can receive up to a staggering 80% of the forfeited assets. That is a massive influx of capital returning directly to the local jurisdictions that did the heavy lifting, while the federal government keeps the remaining 20%. However, there are very strict rules. It is absolutely not a blank check. Local forces can only spend this payout on specific law enforcement purposes. We're talking new body cameras, specialized training, maybe buying canine units. It can never, and I mean never, be used to pad out regular officer salaries or just replace the department's standard baseline budget. Now, giving the state the power to seize and keep billions of dollars is immense. To impartially balance this power and prevent abuse, strict oversight is required. The Civil Asset Forfeiture Reform Act of 2000, CAFRA, increased the government's burden of proof and specifically created protections for innocent owners who genuinely had no idea their property was involved in a crime. Plus, every single dollar has to be accounted for in annual reports to Congress.
When you step back and look at this entire legal case study, stripping an enterprise of its cash through an in rem action leaves us with a chillingly clear mechanical reality. This system exists not just to punish, but to completely dismantle the financial foundation of a criminal empire. It ensures that at the end of the day, the math simply does not work out for the criminal.
We've tracked the black money from the flashing lights of the crime scene all the way to the treasury vaults and back into the hands of victims and local precincts. But looking at the sheer scale and efficiency of this pipeline, you really have to ask yourself, what else out there is secretly funding the fight against the underworld? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it completely changes how you view the next big bust on the evening news.